Here's to you, dear listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Metal Gear Monday's Revengeance, where you'll find your favorite conversations around Metal Gear and Kojima-related content delivered to you through tactical podcast action. Today we have another interview that we'd love to share with you guys with Peter Lurie. Now, I'm not having this conversation by myself, obviously. I have a friend with me, Miss Tori Cortez. How we doing, Tori?
Doing well. How are you doing, Warren?
Pretty good. It was a good conversation. And also, Alessio Summerfield, Ghost Dad himself. What's up, man?
Lurie. It's pronounced like Murray. I've been saying that to myself all day long out of sheer terror.
I felt so bad. I sent you the text, like, I'm gonna be a dude. I'm gonna help out. I'm gonna feel real good about this. And I feel like I just sent an anxiety missile.
You did.
Into our little threesome here.
Oh, man. I think the whole issue was back when we were preparing for the Paul Eiding interview. I made the mistake of mispronouncing his last name several times, as well as Stephanie Justin's last name. And so whenever I got the text, I don't even remember how I was pronouncing it. It was probably fine. But ever since then, I have now become anxiety-ridden, and I cannot stop saying Lurie as much as I possibly can.
Yes.
Lurie.
Peter Lurie. Can't wait to hear
Lurie?
it.
What's the alternative? The
Lurie?
alternative is like Lurie.
Yeah, so like Lori. Lori's a common one.
Lurie?
Like Leary. Some people sometimes think there's, like, for some reason, like a little extra E in there that doesn't exist. To give it there, but I don't know. Lurie made sense, and it makes sense to us. So yeah, so we learned that it's Lurie, everyone, and you just learned that too.
You'll also learn a bunch of other great facts in this, like interesting tidbits about the sports world that Peter is involved in, which I don't know if I ever thought that Vulcan Raven would be involved in equestrian sports. So get amped for that conversation.
Yeah,
It was
who
awesome.
did? Who would have guessed that? I
Yeah,
guess
Peter,
people who looked at his IMDb.
Yeah, exactly. Peter, I don't know, man. Peter's just such a cool guy. It was, I gotta say, we've done a few of these now, and with, like, Peter was, like, sort of, at least for me personally, like, kind of that first one where I was like, oh no, like, he was in Cowboy Bebop and Akira and Naruto and all these things that I love outside of Metal Gear that I was like, it took me a few minutes. So sorry if you guys hear that, but Peter, I love you, and like I said that before, is I'm just a huge fan, and he just loves his craft. And it's just like a really fun conversation where he basically just does what he wants because he's Peter Lurie, and I love that about him.
Boy, howdy. Yeah, no, Peter is sort of the man of a million voices. Like, I don't know, it's crazy. I hadn't thought of it before, but going through and looking at his accolades and past credits and stuff like that, I was really blown away that, like, I don't know, it feels like we're talking like the Gary Oldman of voice work.
Yeah.
Like,
Well
it's like, oh shit, was he? And then you look and you're like, no, yeah, that's totally him. Like,
Yeah, which is really cool to see. It's just a laundry list. It's just an awesome little category. You know, it's one after another, and you're like, man, you were in that? How'd that happen?
Totally.
You
Yeah,
know?
not
He
only
just
that,
kept
but he
going.
was just a treat to talk to. A very entertaining interviewee.
yeah, super down to earth guy too. A lot of good advice and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right, yeah. That's right. Towards the end there, he's giving advice. I don't even think he meant to, but you could just tell he has ample experience to sort of just, like, that wisdom just sort of carries. It's a part of the conversation. I was like,
Yeah.
I took notes.
Yeah, I was hard pressed to believe that he wasn't a shaman by the end of the year.
Yeah. So yeah, guys. So without further ado, we'll do some quick little plugs here. But it was a great joy talking with Peter, and I'm glad that you guys get to hear our conversation. And it's nice to say that pretty much unedited. We're just gonna do some cleaning up here and there, but that conversation is just what he felt like saying versus our questions. We try to be a little prepared. He didn't even care to look at our notes. He just wanted to have a conversation, which was really cool. Alessio, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Hey, you can find me at AC Summerfield pretty much everywhere. So nice and easy. If you go to alessiosummerfield.com, however, instead of having to find everything will find you. There's a lot of good links. Links to some of my writing, links to some of my films, and hopefully more fun stuff coming down the way. So you can check me out there.
Awesome. What about you, Tori? Where can they find you on the internet?
I don't have a website, but if you just type Young Neil into the Google, you'll probably find me. It's YNGMEIL.
And this episode, our sponsor is Squarespace. You can build a website. No, I'm kidding.
Jesus. But let me tell you guys about Bonobos pants. So yeah, you can find me on the internet at Warren Minix at all the socials, Untaggable Gamer if that is something you're into for gamer tags. And as far as the podcast, you can grab us on anywhere, so hopefully wherever you're listening to this. Thank you if you rate and review. You guys are the best. This will also be on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Hello, everyone. Check us out on Patreon, and check us out on MetaGearMondays.com. So without any further ado, a little interview with Peter Lurie.
Peter, it is an absolute pleasure to have a chance to speak to you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
No, the pleasure is all mine.
I'd like to have you talk a little bit about your background and have a chance to expose people to more than just the Metal Gear side of your career. And so we kind of wanted to start chronologically and kind of where you started in your career. Like, take us back to the mid to late 80s, your Universal Tour Guide days. How did you get from that to entering the voice world?
You did your homework. Look at you. It's actually interesting that you would bring that up because I come from an acting family. My father was a character actor. He was one of those famous people that you'd say, oh, I've seen him a bunch of times, but I have no idea what his name is. And he was, when I was a young lad, was one of the voiceover actors. I would say kind of the pioneer era during like the Dawes Butler and Mel Blanc, and where they were basically doing everything. And he used to work as, how would you say it? He was one of the, like, I won't say contract players, but he was one of those go-to guys at Hanna-Barbera. So he would provide a lot of the incidental characters for things like the Flintstones, the Jetsons, Johnny Quest, you name it. He was basically in those. So I got to see those when I was a young kid, and my mom was a character actress and a stand-up comedian. Unfortunately, I lost her when I was 7. That was somebody shaking.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
I guess somebody was shaking something. I guess that was like a special effect. You guys are high end. I like that, special effects and everything. The long and the short of it is, when I became a tour guide, I was like everybody else, trying to be a character actor in town and taking whatever gigs I could. I was a musician, and, my old man taught me a long time, take whatever until you can afford not to, because you never know what's going to happen. And my quote unquote waiter job was being a tour guide. And one afternoon I was on the back lot and was going down by the property warehouse, and there was a couple of people walking by. And I was told later on, one of them turned to the other and said, that guy makes a fortune in voiceover. Why is he a tour guide? And luckily for me, the guy that he was talking to was a friend of mine who said, who do you think that is? And I won't say who the actor is. It's not necessary, but it's not fair. But they said the actor's name, and he said, no, that's not him. He's a friend of mine. And he says, well, handed him a card and said, you need him to give me a call. And it was one of the gentlemen who owned Bell Sound, which was a big recording studio down in Hollywood at the time. And I got involved in kind of what they would refer to as a workout class. He thought I had the stuff. And flash forward a year later, I was working in the biz.
That's awesome. Was it I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but was it the Hanna-Barbera connection that brought you to Chris Zimmerman?
I guess yes and no. Sure. Absolutely. My father, as I mentioned, was kind of one of their go-to guys. Gordon Hunt was the director. Gordon Hunt, who unfortunately we just lost recently, one of the great directors of all time, great person of all time. And his protege was Chris Zimmerman. So when I was a young lad, probably, I would say about 17, 18 years old, I would go and occasionally watch my old man do his thing. And Chris, of course, was there. I think she was casting at the time, if I remember correctly. So I got to meet her there. And in the early instincts, I got auditioned a couple of times over at Hanna-Barbera back in their days, and got close on a couple of big projects. I can say now, because it's long since gone, I was one of the last choices to play Bam Bam as a adult. I forgot what the show was called, but it was when Pebbles and Bam Bam became married and they had a kid and all that fun stuff. So that was pretty exciting. I was right down to the wire for that one, and I thought, wow, I'm going to make it. And, that's kind of where the ball started rolling.
That's awesome. I always find that the context kind of starts to click all the different pieces into place. One of the questions I wanted to actually ask about your father is we've got an ongoing theory here on the podcast that a lot of the best voice actors are all from the Midwest for some reason, and very specifically Ohio. So I saw that your father was also from Ohio. Do you lend any credence to this theory that we have?
I don't know about that. I just think that back when you're referring to, and I'm guessing here, was Dawes Butler Ohio? I'm guessing.
I think so. I know a lot of your castmates in Metal Gear are also Ohio as well.
I think just what it comes down to is when my father was coming around, you had to have a strong radio background, because, that's what he started out in. And he went to New York and did radio, and a lot of people did it that way. I know that Mel Blanc, was famous being on the air on radio, and I would guess Dawes Butler was probably the same way. So that kind of gave them the leg up when they made their move to LA. At the time, there wasn't a ton of people in voiceover. In fact, even when I started, and I would say officially, I would call myself a working voiceover actor, probably about 89, 90, something like that. The numbers were something like 800 people total were considered voiceover actors. Now it's in the hundreds of thousands of people who claim they're a voiceover actor. Whether they are or aren't is to be debated. But back then it was a much smaller group. If you went to go read for an audition, you went to a casting agent. It was usually you and about 20 or 30 other people. So, you had a much better shot back then.
I wanted to ask, I saw that the original dub for the iconic anime film Akira was on your credits list, and we've spoken to somebody else who was also in that film, Cam Clark, notably Liquid Snake in Metal Gear. Did you know Cam before Akira, or did you guys meet after? Did you ever connect while you were working together, or was it one of those sort of like one in the booth, one out of the booth kind of a deal?
We did a commercial together for MCA Records, had a group, and I'm trying to remember, the group was called Flotsam and Jetsam. It was one of those, at the time, kind of one of those one-hit wonder groups. And back then, they did a lot of those commercials, which I used to do a lot. I was the guy who would always say, the new album on our CA Records and Tapes. He and I were playing two stoners, kind of Wayne's World, prior Wayne's World. And we were in the booth together that time. So we kind of met that way.
Cam's awesome. I can only imagine that those recordings are probably fantastic.
They made a lot of people laugh. And that's kind of what got me going in the album promo world for about 10 years till I got away from it. Yeah, it was fun.
Was Akira your first feature film project?
For anime, I would think probably. I can't really say, to be honest. First movie I ever did is actually one of those ones that goes in the Trivial Pursuit questions. I was the voice of Brandon Lee in the Crow motion picture.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he had passed away, and they decided they wanted to try to finish it. I think it was but the behest of his mother. And my agent got a call one day, and they wouldn't tell her what it was, and they just played a sample and said, "You got anybody who sounds like that?" And I was pretty new to this. I went second agency I'd ever been in, and I was pretty new to them. And they said they thought it was a joke. They thought somebody I knew was calling as a practical joke. And they went, "Yeah, sure, yeah, we have somebody." And they said, "Great, we'll send them down." And they sent me to the big studio and had about 4 or 5 auditions, and finally They said, you have the job and this is what it is. And that was it was one of those where you say, if I get it, great. If I don't, great. Because it's kind of creepy. Dubbing somebody who unfortunately passed away the way Brandon did.
Oh, for sure.
But it gave me an opportunity to work with an amazing director by the name of Alex Preyas. And I spent
That's crazy.
Yeah, I spent about 14 hours on a soundstage with him, doing, like almost half the film had to be fixed at some point or another. And, had some lines, had some fight scenes, had some, just general yelling and screaming. And it was a great experience.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, the circumstances, but I'm happy to hear that something came from it. And I don't know, it's always cool to hear all these tenuous relationships between all these media products that we are familiar with.
Yeah, I've always been quite curious about how they carried on with the production of that movie after Brandon Lee's passing.
Yeah, they from what I remember, obviously we're going back a few decades, I don't think they were going to do it. And then after a while, I'm guessing Preyas, and I know the mother was very insistent that they needed to finish this thing, for Brandon's, legacy. And I'm glad they did. It's a very good movie. It's very dark. It's very good. No disrespect to the, second and third carnates of that, but I don't think anybody was as good as Brandon was. And it's just so sad. You realize, what could he have been if he had made it?
Right. Well, it's excellent that you were able to jump in there and they were able to complete the movie. If I could take us back to the anime topic, I'm just curious, do you watch anime regularly, or have you watched any of the shows or video games, or I guess played any of the video games that you have had a role in voicing?
I don't play video games. I've never had the interest. I think when I still always remember when Metal Gear Solid came out and they sent me a copy and they said, you got to try it. It's going to be amazing. And being that I have no idea how to operate the joysticks and the buttons and all that, if I did, maybe, if I had that interest, maybe I'd say something different, like, oh my, I live for it. But it never really appealed to me. And I remember trying it for about 20 minutes, and it was the same thing. Every time I would just bump in the wall, bump in the wall, bump in the wall. You're underwater, you're dead. And I just thought,
it's hard to carry on with something.
Yeah.
If there's not a lot of reason.
Yeah, and I just kind of went, well, I dig it. I dig the games because to me, it's almost, and I say almost, it's almost like radio where, with you have to create something that's memorable. You can't just walk in there and go, okay, you're going to die. You have to actually think about it, and it's got to go through you. Sure. And I think that's what separates the really good voiceover actors from the folks who are just kind of getting through it.
Right. If I could take us to Metal Gear for a moment, we have a listener question from Tyler W. And he asks, outside of Metal Gear, what are some of the most memorable and fun roles that you've had?
Well, Tyler, if I had to say, one of my favorites was playing Paxton Fettel in the Fear series. Paxton Fettel was an afterthought when I auditioned for it. And when I got the job and I showed up, they said, just give you some background. He was a military type. And they said he morphed into this cannibalistic serial killer. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And they said the twist is when he would feast on someone, he would immediately gain all of their knowledge, all of their strength, and it makes him for a very formidable foe. And in the first one, he had a decent part, but it wasn't huge. But there was such an outcry by the fans that by 2 and 3, he was the lead character. And that was a very, very fun character to play. I would have to say one of the memorable,
and especially to see him grow.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sorry. There's always talk on the chat rooms, and sometimes you even see it in the press that they want to do a 4. And there's like then of course they get like 75,000 people chiming in saying you better use the original cast or it means nothing. Because unfortunately now we kind of do everything with but we can get a celebrity to do it instead.
Right.
And hey, no, listen to that. That was Warren jumping in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Whatever, dude. You know what? I say power to anybody who works, man. That's fantastic. But I'm one of those people too that feel that, there's a lot of really talented people out there who have made their living doing this particular art form, and it is an art form, and now they're not allowed to do it because companies are saying, yeah, but we can make so much more money if we attach this name to it. And to me, that's it's kind of sad, man. I think it bothers it. That's not to say that there aren't B-list celebrities who are very good at it. There are. I mean, 2 that come to mind to me always are Ellen DeGeneres and Albert Brooks. They were born to do this. They were born to do animation. But there have been ones over the years that I go, yeah, that's okay. But why did you have to get rid of, the man or the woman that was doing that for decades? I don't see the point.
Yeah, agreed. I have found myself in many situations asking that same question.
So I wanted to ask actually about your current work as as a fan of these games and as somebody who's done research obviously for this interview. I was caught off guard a little bit whenever I realized that your current work is actually mostly doing like anchor work for horse
racing. Yeah.
I wanted to learn more about that because I obviously my curiosity was piqued, but I'm sure our listeners at home are probably like, whoa, what?
Basically, like I think I've said it before, with the advent of the celebrity, a lot of work has gone their way. I mean, I might be wrong, but probably like 80% of the gigs are going to the celebrity influence. Therefore, you're in a position now where if this is all you're going to do, your chances of making quote unquote a living is really slim to none. There are those folks who keep getting the work, and there are, every time I've thought, well, it's time to maybe move on, then something really good comes along, and, I keep going. But my father was a character actor, as I mentioned. He was an avid horse racing fan and brought me to racetracks when I was 4 years old, and I learned to absolutely love the sport. Growing up, they were my heroes. The jockeys, the horses, the trainers, what have you. Mm-hmm. And when I really got into the voiceover business and was making a very good living, I always know that my father always wanted a racehorse, but couldn't afford it. He's raising a family. So I decided it was, I always thought it would be kind of fun. So I decided to get one with a couple of buddies and figured, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it ended up, going on for almost 20 years. During that period, I used to go and watch my horses work out in the morning. And a gentleman used to come out as we were, have a cup of tea and chat. Turned out he was one of the highest ranking people of what's called the Stronach Corporation, which owns Santa Anita out here in Southern California, among other racetracks. And one morning he just said, hey, do you have a resume and a tape on you? And I said, I'm sure I do, in the car. And he said, well, why don't you give it to me? And I said, what's it for? And he goes, it's probably nothing, but just, I said, sure, why not? A month later, I get a call from a woman by the name of Amy Zimmerman, who was the executive producer of a new station they were putting together called HRTV. And she called me and said, I'd like to meet. And she explained to me they were starting a new station and they wanted me to be a part of it. And I just kind of thought, you know what? As my father said, never turn down a gig. I'd never done sports television in my life. Never had any aspirations to do it. And flash forward 20 years later, I worked for TVG, I worked for Santa Anita, I've been around the country, Canada. It's been a nice little living. And it's fun. It's fun. I kind of take it to the point of view of, I try not to be all starchy and stiff. And the general public basically appreciates that I kind of come across. It was said once in a clip, he said, the consummate professional who attracts the average Joe, because I am one of them. And I always took that as one of the biggest compliments ever. I make people feel like I'm one of them, and it's because I am. If I wasn't working there, I'd be going to the track anyway, so why not get paid to do it?
That's a very good frame of mind to have.
Well, thank you.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, Peter, because I was interested sort of like why like a job may speak out to you. So is it truly that it's like all contacts? Someone reaches out to you about a potential job or a gig or something and you're ready to go?
Now, are you referring to voiceover or are you referring to the TV? Or just in general?
I guess I would say voiceover, but honestly, I'm interested to hear about any piece of it.
You know what? It depends. Relationships are so important, but especially in our business, they're ever changing. And hopefully after a while, you have a word of mouth. Somebody, that you knew at a certain time is now doing a certain job. And, I think the business is just like any other business. They want to do it as easy as possible. And they want to make sure that the people they're bringing in can deliver. A lot of times you can bring in a heavy hitter in a sense of like a name actor or actress, and then you bring them in a booth and it's not what you hoped it would be. And I think that plays a big role. I think going back to my father, that's why I was always told my father worked, because did he come in and do the huge parts? No. Once or twice he had a really good gig. But mainly the casting director and the director thought, I'm bringing this guy in because I know whatever I throw at him, he's going to be able to deliver. And I have those same people out there, and it kind of makes me feel good that there is somebody out there who believes in you. Because as an actor, trust me, we are constantly getting beaten down, no matter what stage of the acting profession you're in. If you don't have a thick skin, I would strongly suggest you try something else.
Sure. It's actually funny you brought up Zimmerman. In no way is that a relation to Chris Zimmerman?
No, absolutely not. Yeah,
It's just very coincidental.
Two completely different people. Although Chris Zimmerman is a huge fan of the equine athlete. She's had horses for years. We were just speaking about a week ago, and she's doing great. And I will always say she was a big part of my career going forward.
Do you happen to keep up with anyone else that you? Because I'm just going through your credits, and it seems like you share some time with Paul Eiding, Jennifer Hale. Keep up with them at all?
You know what? It's. I'm one of those people that my personal life is different than my work life. There are people that I still see to this day, but for the most part, a lot of the actors in the business, I've never really wanted to, how do you put this in a diplomatic way? There's a lot of great people in the era, but I always feel like when I'm done working, I want to kind of separate that from my personal life. There are, like I said, there are some people that I still see, but I've never ever been one of those people that goes, I got to make sure I go to every party, at every event. It's just not who I am. Probably to my detriment.
Hey, if anything, it makes you more interesting, Peter.
Thank you.
having worked, so I currently work in network television, and I feel like everybody I talk to, it's like all they want to talk about is the industry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It sounds very elitist, but that bores me.
No, I totally agree with you.
I've been there. Like I said, Colleen O'Shaughnessy is a good friend, but we make it a point when we are around each other, we kind of keep that on the don't need to talk about it too much, just because if that's, in my opinion, if that's all you've got going on, you're kind of limiting yourself in life. I just
100%.
Yeah, I just think there's so much more going on. Occasionally that actually gets you work because of that. You don't seem, not that everyone is, but sometimes there's an era as an actor, whether it's a voice, on camera, whatever, there can be an era of desperation in people when that's all they talk about. And I think sometimes it turns people off. Sometimes it's unavoidable. But I, as usual, try to say, let's not do that. You know what I do, and you know how to get a hold of me. Let's do it that way. Not to say that I'm not available. Yeah, not to say I'm not available. I've worked on projects before where I've had people call me and say, listen, I'm doing this thing. I think the part is perfect for you, but we're still trying to get funding. Is there any chance you could help us out? And, before we even finish the sentence, I said, absolutely. Tell me where I got to be. Because it is a creative outlet. And like I said, when I'm doing the racetrack and doing the TV, is it fun? Yes. Is it enjoyable to do? Yes. Creatively, does it float my boat? Not particularly. But when I get in a booth, or if I get in in front of a camera, doing a motion picture or something like that, yeah, it gives you a chance to, stretch your legs a little and try something new. And so that's always great.
Sure, yeah. If I could pivot a little bit into the main work that we're familiar with from you, Metal Gear Solid, naturally. So was this your first video game project?
Let's see here. Actually, I believe it might have been. It's possible. I think I might have done a couple of minor parts in other games that I can't think of right now.
Gotcha. So certainly the most memorable video game project.
In the video game world, absolutely.
Awesome. The Vulcan Raven character is just one that stands out, I think, in many fans' minds. And I think all of us here at Metal Gear Mondays are curious, did the Vulcan Raven character speak to you in any way, or was just another interesting role that you were eager to play?
You can say it. You know what? At the time, man, I was, when I got the word from Chris Zimmerman that she thought this was the kind of part that I would really do well with, and I heard about him, I heard the backstory, I thought, oh man, this is going to be fun. This is me out of the box. And I said, okay. And the more and more I kind of got into it, the more and more I just realized that this was probably going to be a part that, people were going to remember. I mean, he gets killed in the first section of the game, which kind of bummed me out.
True.
But I'm famous for that, by the way. Memorable characters who die.
So you joined the ranks of Sean Bean?
Yeah, exactly. Memorable characters who get killed. But when I finished it, I still hear about it for years. In fact, I was doing a game, I believe, I won't say where it was, but I was doing a game and there was a large Japanese presence in the booth because it was their game. They came over from Tokyo. And when I was done after the first, halfway of the first day, I was there for about 3 days. They asked me a favor. They said, the executives have brought some stuff they would love you to sign. Metal Gear Solid is considered by the Japanese culture one of the best representations transferring over to an American audience. And I guess because not always, they feel like, well, this is what I think it should sound like. And then when we get a hold of it, it's not even close to being what they were hoping for. It might be successful, but it's not what they envisioned it should have been.
Right.
And they were very, very polite, very, very excited, very enthusiastic. And they said they felt that the Vulcan Raven character was one of the best representations of a character that they created. And they wanted me to.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, and it's like, I wish I had some of these things. There were giant books, like with artistry of the whole Metal Gear world, that was just so amazing to see. And that kind of meant a lot to me when I saw that. I said, you know what, this is a big deal. And obviously, your podcast, and there's a lot of them out there. It continues to go. I mean, I'd love to see them maybe reimagine it now that they have new technology. It would be great to have the Raven back, but
oh yeah,
it's also I would feel it would be a disservice if they said, okay, we're going to redo it and we're just going to recast with celebrities and it's going to be, wow, this is going to be amazing. I think you do that and you lose the audience. Maybe not,
sure,
but that's my feeling.
Well, we recently spoke about who we would cast in the roles of the Metal Gear Solid movie. I don't know if you've heard that news. And that kind of came up a couple times. We cast people that we just thought would be fun to see in it. But we also had very serious conversations about how would this movie really work. And I think a lot of that would be credited to serious actors who can serious play the role.
Oh yeah, no, you wouldn't want doing a live action is completely different than doing the voiceover. Voiceover,
right.
It's voice. You can, it's like radio. Just because a series that went from radio to television, just because a radio actor was great at what he or she was doing, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate to in front of a camera. And in most cases, it didn't. So that totally makes sense.
Peter, you mentioned that the incredible compliment of the way you portrayed Vulcan Raven was a credit to, I suppose, the essence of the character in the Japanese culture. Do you think that the incredible Vulcan Raven laugh had anything to do with that? Listener Alex Sinadinos, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, wants to know how you came up with the incredibly memorable Vulcan Raven laugh.
Well, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. It just kind of came out of me. And I think that's a testament, again, of Chris Zimmerman as a director, because it's not like everything was one take. And I might have done that laugh, and she just started laughing in the booth and said, that is tremendous. You got to do that. Okay, you got to give me a real big version of that. And, again, that's the difference between a good director and a bad director.
Sure.
She knows what she wants, but at the same standpoint, a line that her and, of course, the late, great Gordon Hunt would say is, let's play. Some people say it, and I think they're just saying it just because they think, oh, that sounds good to say that. But with Chris and with Gordon, they really meant it. They're not looking for a stiff actor to come in and just read. They want kids in adult bodies to come in, and when you were a kid and you played something, you didn't do your voice, you made up a voice. And I think that's, a testament to someone like her, and of course to Gordon Hunt, that they allowed actors to act, to choose scenery, as it were. And sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes you get some of the most memorable characters you're going to find.
Yeah, it seems like a Raven thirsting for blood would bring that out.
By the way, you never asked me who I think should be Vulcan Raven.
Please do tell.
Oh, please do.
No, you got to ask me.
Peter.
Yes.
In the upcoming Metal Gear Solid film.
Yes, I've heard about it.
Who would you like to see cast as Vulcan Raven?
I think it's hands down, Dave Bautista.
Oh, excellent.
Oh.
I think he would be perfect.
I can't believe that never occurred to me.
How dare you, Tori?
I know. That's an excellent choice there,
I
Peter.
thought we had a vibe, and now all of a sudden I'm questioning the whole thing.
Oh, I'd like to think we still do.
Hold on, let me think.
We'll see how it goes.
Hold on. No, we still have a vibe. Okay.
Okay, excellent.
Good. Yeah, no, I think Dave
I was
Bautista.
nervous there for a moment.
Nah, it's all right. You were never out of consideration. Of course, Peter Lurie would be great. Unfortunately, I'm only about 6 feet tall, about 210, so I don't think I'm big enough to play him, where in the case of Dave Bautista, he would be perfect. Dave, if you get the job, you owe me money.
So, Peter, I gotta say, we're talking Metal Gear Solid, and like a fun thing that at least players would know once we started doing our internet research, that the names that came up for the characters were not who played them. And you went by the illustrious Chuck Farley. Any reason why that one spoke to you? Did you use that name anywhere else before that?
I don't remember why they wanted us to have pseudonyms. I must have used that like once, maybe twice. The reason why I was in a silly mood that day and growing up, there was an album by comedians Cheech and Chong that was called Big Bamboo. And as a kid, you were giggling about stupid stuff. They used to do movie trailers, and one of them was called Duggery on the High Seas. And the actor, they said, Chuck U. Farley, and somebody in the South Seas Saga. And he was the one who said, "He's lying, Captain. You're just the big fibber." Cheech Marin played him. While Tommy Chong would say, "Tie that scurvy dog to the yardarm." He's lying, Captain.
That was very good.
Well, thank you. So originally I said Chuck U. Farley. And they quickly said, "Yeah, we're going to take out the U because it's too obvious." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." So that's how Chuck Farley got played.
See, I figured you were trying to use that to hide from David Hayter when they asked you to do Solid Snake for Ape Escape.
Well, you were wrong then, weren't you?
Did you ever get any feedback from David after that sort of parody role you did?
Honestly, it never gave me a second thought. I knew because it was a parody game that I wasn't stealing work from him. And honestly, until I got there, I had no idea what the character was. More times than not, you're just told, "Hi, you got a booking? It's at so-and-so and so-and-so with so-and-so." And when I walked in and found out what it was, I think I might have mentioned, wasn't he available? And I don't remember why he wasn't, or maybe they didn't. I think because it was a parody game, they thought it wouldn't make sense to do that, or maybe the other company would take offense to it. I have no idea. I've actually never said a word or heard a word about it. And if people like it, great. If they didn't, good luck. I really don't have anything I can say. It's as an actor, to me, there's a fine line between taking the job because we all need to make a living, or actually taking someone's job. And I don't believe I did. I think it was just they offered me a job, and when I got there, I found out what it was.
Sure. Yeah, and I got to give credit. A different Alex listener question asked about David Hayter there. Metal Gear Solid, after the game came out, did it change your career path at all?
In regards to what? Just
maybe more jobs coming your way, or just how you approached work, more connections?
I don't know. I have no idea if that job in particular, for me, it kind of picked up after The Crow. So once you're out there and people start hearing you, now all of a sudden other people saying, "Wow, I could use that voice." I was also known as kind of the triple threat, because I did not only commercial but animation, also promo. And when it came to the animation video games per se, I've always done a lot of voices. So that kind of makes you, nowadays, I don't know if it's still, but in those days, it made you very viable because if they could bring you in and have you play 3 parts and every one of them, there's no way to distinguish that they're all the same person doing it. That made you very valuable. So I think, once people started to realize that I was one of those types, it kind of helped my business. The business also is so predicated on somebody that sees something in you they really like and they want to use you. Okay, you're part of their stable. When they stop working, now all of a sudden you're back to square one. There's a very small percentage of actors, if I had to say, and I'm just ballparking off the top of my head, there's probably a dozen guys and 8 to 10 women who does not matter. They're going to work. And
Sure.
It has to do with the fact that they are very, very good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also people, the one thing I've heard, and people have sent this to me before saying, oh, you got to read this. And I've heard it plenty of times. Someone will say, wow, he's really a great actor. I can't understand why he doesn't do more work. To which I would say, yeah, I agree with you.
Sure.
I'd love to do 4 or 5 gigs a week. It's not realistic. As I said, there's got to be a couple of 100,000 people now in the industry who consider themselves voice actors. I just named to you, there are probably roughly a dozen of each, men and women, who, are going to get the lion's share of the work. That doesn't bode well for the other, 199,990, people.
Yeah, I guess I was gonna see, how did you feel about your character, or at least you as a performer, only in a couple of Metal Gear games? Is it just, do you have any personal feelings about that?
When you do a role that's memorable, you're hoping it takes off. And like I said, when I did the first game and I'm dead on the first day of working, I just went, well, that stinks. The same thing happened in the trilogy of Fear. I get my head blown off in the first game, but the character was just so revered by everyone that they said, okay, we got to find a way to bring this guy back. And then, well, through supernatural forces, he can't be killed. And that's what brought him back. Well, unfortunately, I guess you could have done that with, he is a Blackfoot Indian and shaman. If anybody's out there for the Metal Gear world, if you're listening, yeah, you could bring me back, supernatural forces. Supernatural forces.
Yeah.
That always works.
I want that. Absolutely.
I don't think there's anybody out there who doesn't want that.
Well, maybe the podcast to God's ears. But yeah, so it was disappointing. I mean, I've been back a couple of times because they wanted to use it like backstories and things like that, or then they would bring me in just to fill in, some other incidental characters. But yeah, when you have a memorable character, you kind of want them to go on. Recently, when we did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, I play, of course, Leatherhead, the alligator, and the part, got fairly big to the point where they were discussing a spin-off series. And unfortunately, that didn't come to pass. And then once the series got 100 episodes, like most shows, we're done.
I love Leatherhead, by the way. I'm a big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles guy.
Thank you, man. That was some of the most fun I've ever done in a series. Sean Astin is absolute delight. Rob Paulson, one of the great voice actors of all time. The list goes on. Greg Sipes, obviously known for his work. And
Yeah, I see Seth Green, Hoon Lee, some great people on here.
I will say in their respects, like I said, Sean, great guy to work with. Pretty much everybody in that cast. I can't really honestly think of somebody that I say, man. Tom Kenny was in that show. Well, I'll give you the reality of the world. Not everybody you're going to work with, you're going to love. But it comes down to whether or not you're going to get, you just get the job done and try to be as pleasant as possible. It's always been my creed. But that was a lot of fun to work with. Andrea Romano, one of the great directors of animation. And like I said, I wish the spin-off series would have been done. They were doing it for the Mighty Mutanimals, which was that little offshoot. And they were talking about that they were seriously considering doing a spin-off, and then it just didn't go anywhere.
Would that have been like a little dream project? Do you have any dream projects that you'd like to hear in the future?
You know what? I'm not against anything. Bring it on. Let's, I'd love to see a Fear 4. Fear 4 would be fun. I would love them to decide to do the Mighty Mutanimals. Over the years, there's been some really fun characters. I played Sabretooth in a lot of the games and the X-Men games, Victor Creed. And what I thought was one of the best animated shows was X-Men and the Wolverine and the X-Men. Steve Bloom plays, of course, Logan, and I was Victor Creed. And we did one year, and they were expecting it was just going to be huge, and it was so well put together. And unfortunately, you can really put together a good product, but in this day and age, if the toys don't sell like they want them to, unfortunately, they're not going to finish it. And that was too bad. We had from what I heard, we had the script had already been written for the next season. And it was going to, there was going to be a huge storyline between Logan and Victor. And it would have been a lot of fun. Unfortunately, like I said, it didn't happen. But no regrets. I'm just Jamie Simone was the man who casted me in that one. Very good producer and director, and it was just it was a great opportunity. And who knows? You never say never. Something like that might come back.
Yeah, I guess as far as advice goes. Is that something you have a little one-liner you like to give to people that are sort of interested in trying to break into the industry?
I would give them the same line that my old man gave me when I decided at about 19 that I was going to do this. He said, if you're going to do it, make sure you got a job that pays the bills. Highly recommend that. He said, you don't ever want to be that person that is depending on everybody else for you to make a living. I also found that if you do have that kind of a gig, your voice reads tend to be a little bit more relaxed, and they're a lot better because you're not quote unquote desperately looking for the job.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to question that too, because I've listened to some interviews of yours, and you bring up stuff like that where you want to be able to have the time to sort of find the character, take more than 5 takes, actually work through it. And you bring up the house for Metal Gear Solid that you spent time with the cast and recorded your lines. Is there a Peter Lurie version you'd like to sort of share a little bit?
I'm not sure what you mean.
So my understanding is you guys had one big place like this where you recorded everything. And and you just sort of had some fun stories from there. Curious if you want to share any.
You know what the funny part is? Doing that game, none of us were in the booth at the same time. It was all separate. Video games, cartoons are different. Although I remember doing American Dad, and Seth MacFarlane was very big on everybody doing their lines separately. So
Interesting.
yeah, not everybody is, I did a couple episodes there as the mysterious stranger when Roger gets abducted by a Middle Eastern prince. Yes, I'm the one who abducts Roger. and
I'll have
takes
to
him.
go back and rewatch that episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I will not normally watch the stuff. I mean, like, I have to have it. I have to see it. If I happen to see it, great. And one day on the TBS, I was just killing time doing stuff, watching it, and lo and behold, it came up. And most of the times than not, we're our own worst critics. But I remember seeing it, and I thought, that's pretty good. I actually like that.
Peter, I wanted to jump in and kind of guide us to the end of our interview since we're coming up on time. We've got one final listener question. And when this question came through our inbox, I immediately was like, why did I not think to ask you this? So Alex V writes, you and Doug Stone are not only credited for your incredibly memorable roles as Raven and Mantis, respectively, but also as Soldiers A and Soldiers B. Were you, as Soldier B, responsible for the now iconic line delivery for "It's just a box"? And I have the clip here for you to listen to for reference. Is this you?
Just a box.
Doesn't sound like me.
Okay, so it's got to be Doug.
Yeah.
Excellent. Mystery solved. But what kind of, you talk about how Chris was like a big proponent for play in the booth sometimes.
No, always.
So what kind of lines did you record for this soldier role?
I have I'm sorry. I hate to come up blank.
No, yeah, it's like 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm sure they're, the usual, check it out, or, we got a light in sector 3,
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to
print through these.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to sometimes just deliver them, and not as much as some people will make it out that it's this wonderful journey. I always love,
sure.
With some characters, you go, nah, it's just, I was told what to do and I did it. Obviously, Vulcan Raven was something completely different. But yeah, sometimes, you do it and hopefully people like it and they move on,
Well, we've got a lot of people who like it and do not move on.
That's fantastic. I don't mean it in that way. I meant it as an actor. Sometimes you just got to do it. You got to put it to bed. And then later on, hopefully if it becomes something very popular, you revisit it. But if you obsess over everything you ever do, you're going to be in bad shape quick. I think that's what it comes down to. It's
really good advice.
Yeah. It's just, I'm in the rare world of getting paid to be a kid. That's what it really comes down to. And if the career comes to an end, I have no regrets. I had a lot of fun. I was in the booth a couple days ago for a project that I can't say. Unfortunately, no, it's all right. You'll like it. It'll be fun.
Good to hear.
Well, you just look it up and you'll go, oh, that's what he was talking about. But yeah, it's like one moment you think, well, maybe this is there are highs, there are lows, there's ups, there's downs, and like any profession, there's going to be the time where they don't want you anymore. It's not personal. It's not like they don't like you. It's that it's kind of time to move on. And I don't think I'm anywhere near that. But if it did, I wouldn't have regrets. I'd say I did a lot of really good work and made a lot of people happy. And, right off into the sunset, as it were.
Yeah, I don't know if we're recording a podcast interview anymore or your like retirement message.
No, hell no. Oh, this podcast, I can swear, right?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck no.
Well, Peter, thank you for your time, both as a performer and on this interview.
No, it was absolutely my pleasure. You guys are great. Warren,
awesome.
Tori, I know you guys were in the background, but you guys were incredible.
Well, thank you.
Huh?
It was excellent to talk to you.
Well, come on, Warren. You were saying something.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say I very much appreciate a lot of the work you've done and like going over your stuff I'm a big anime kid, big video game guy, big Turtles guy. It's just really an honor to talk to you and just hear how much you love your art.
Absolute pleasure. Let's bring Hashirama back. Speaking of a guy who dies and keeps coming back on Naruto.
You know, I'm
Right.
so happy that you mentioned that. I was just telling the boys before this recording that I had to run downstairs and tell my stepson that I was going to talk to the guy that voiced Hashirama.
Well, you see, you guys get out there and start getting me work. You're my new management team. You're my new management team. Go to work.
That's amazing. Along those lines, Peter, is there anything that you want to plug to the listeners?
Be good to one another. Be happy. Don't feel like your life is not important. Your life is just as important as everybody else. And let's all hope that this fucking dumpster fire of 2020 goes away and never comes back.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Or as Vulcan Raven would say, Snake!
Excellent.
Amazing.